Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fierce and Flowing podcast. For those of you that haven't tuned in for a while, we're on season 2 already. This is number 6 of season 2, and actually it's number 32 overall. So I'm just so thrilled. I absolutely love these conversations. I absolutely adore the people that join me for these conversations, and today is no different. So I want to welcome and introduce you to someone who's become a dear friend in my life, and his name is Arabia Darensberg, and he goes by International Transformation Coach. And so we're going to dive into that, and learn all about the amazing work that Arabia is doing, that he has done in the world, and what this evolution will be, moving forward. So Arabia, welcome.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. And yes, you are definitely a dear friend, and I'm just excited to be able to share my story with you and your listeners. And I'm super excited to get started and to flow, like we say.
Oh, awesome. I'm honored. I really am honored. I have to say that, as you know, the way life goes, you are partnered with one of my dearest friends, and my one of my soul sisters, my spiritual sisters, and over the years, she drops in, this information about you, about your life, and in those moments, I'm like, I had no idea. I had no
Right.
idea who Arabia was, and your incredible story. And I truly am honored to share a piece of you with the world, in hopes that individuals like you and I out there who are really either dealing with something difficult or at a place in their life where, they're still unsure of who they are, they're a little stuck, and they want to know how to move forward and maybe make a fierce decision, do something. Again, I call it fierce, but it really tugs at our heart, tugs at our soul. And usually the fierce things we do are difficult because we don't want to hurt anybody. We're afraid of, showing up in our lives in a very powerful way. But when we do it, it could really be transformative, not only for us and the people around us, but for the world that gets to experience, who we are. So
So true.
I am excited for this, and knowing for sure that the individuals who hear this podcast are going to get something very special from your story. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
so with that, I always start with the question of, what is a fierce moment in your life, or a fierce story that's a part of your life that that you would love to share with our audience today?
Well, the first moment that comes to mind is probably a combination of a
Yeah.
couple moments, but it's the same moment in its own right. But I am a two-time recipient of a kidney transplant. So that was a very fierce, the first kidney transplant, fierce moment in my life. And then I actually ended up getting another one 14 years later. So those moments kind of coincide right from the congruency of that.
Yeah.
It was the same type of moment that I had to be very fierce. And yeah, it's a story that I really haven't really told on a local or national level to some degree. And I'm a very private person by nature. So yeah, being able to now share it with the world is an honor, and hopefully it will inspire somebody to stay fierce and to if they're in a specific moment in life right now, can inspire them to push through.
It
So
definitely, it
yeah,
definitely will. And in a moment, I want you to take me back to how that all happened, how it all started. But
sure.
you know, um, a lot of what I do is teaching people how to flow, right? And part of that flow is um, understanding, why certain things happen, what tugs at us, and being really conscious and aware. And what comes to me from your story immediately, because I work with the 5 elements, and
Sure.
knowing that the kidneys relate to the element of water, and
Sure.
water relates to talk about the definition of fierceness. Think of think of a tsunami and what a tsunami can take down. It has
Sure.
this power, this resilience, um, and so much energy behind it, that to think of not just the fact that you had one kidney transplant, but two, and here you are today, healthy and so resilient, is just absolutely incredible. What a gift, what a blessing, you know?
Yes, truly
Um,
good.
but walk us through that story and talk to us about how you have had to tap into that wealth of strength, of power to keep going, especially in those moments where I'm sure you had no energy, you were drained of energy, and and be able to still tap into um, all of this wealth of knowledge and transformation that you want to share with the world.
Thank you. For sure. So I initially out of high school joined the Marine Corps. By nature, I'm a very competitive person. I'm always looking for the next challenge, the next daredevil moment. I
Yep.
grew up in North Carolina. I grew up in the country, so in the '80s, I did all the crazy stuff. So I'm all I'm about sports, and I'm a student scholar, athlete scholar, as I
Okay.
say. So I was
Yes.
super smart in math and very attentive in education, but I was very sportive. So I was an athlete and I'm very physical, right?
Yeah.
So out of high school, the next I played every sport you could imagine. But out of high school, I was like, what's the next hardest challenge? So it was
Yeah.
the United States Marine Corps,
Wow.
right? So it's like the toughest boot camp, the toughest thing to do. My older brother had went 4 years prior to me.
Okay.
My grandfather was
Wow.
actually in the Marine Corps as well. So we have, lineage and history of that. So went to the Marine Corps. I did my training there over time. I did the things I needed to do in the Marine Corps. And then while I was in the Marine Corps, I got into college, went into the reserve part.
Mm.
But within that, I started to get into Army ROTC, right?
Okay.
So that in itself is another story where going from the Marines to the Army and that
Yeah.
transition is hard. So I was literally in both at the same time to some degree because I
Wow.
was still in the Corps, but in Army ROTC in college.
Okay.
So I was training in both. Upon graduation, I got commissioned as an officer in the Army in the finance sector, and was coming back on active duty after college. So within that, we were going to officer basic camp, which when they train you, it's like another boot camp, but they train you within inside of that specific specialty, which was finance.
Right.
Within that time, you're in your quarters, you're going to class, you're doing PT training, all these type of things. So whenever you come back on active duty, then you have to take a physical, right? So
Okay.
within side of the time that I took the physical, they noticed that there was some protein in my urine.
Okay.
So they're like, okay, well, you're gonna have to come back and do a 24-hour analysis. These type of things, happens when you're training. You may have a little bit of that inside of your body when you're doing rigorous type training, right?
Right.
So with inside of that time frame, I'm still continuing on my normal schedule with training with the other cadets that was there as well. So I remember so vividly is I was sitting. We had just finished class. I was inside the officers' quarters, and I got a phone call from the doctor. Well, actually, initially from the nurse, and the nurse was like, "Oh, well, we want to give you results of your blood work, of your analysis," and there was something going on with it, but she didn't tell me, right?
Right.
So I'm waiting for the
Nerve-wracking.
doctor to, oh, very nerve wracking. So I'm waiting for the doctor to come back to the phone. It's like 15 minutes. And I'm like sitting on pins and needles, like, what is going on? So yeah, he comes back and he tells me, he's like, yeah, we're going to need to do a biopsy of your kidney. It's like something's going on. This 24-hour your analysis shows that you are, constantly spilling protein.
Wow.
Um, so I was, just dumbfounded. This is like I won't say the height of my career, but part of the height
Right.
of my military career, right?
Yeah.
I went enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, but being an officer is always something that I wanted to do. And I was very like smart in math, and I studied finance, international um, business and finance in school.
Yeah.
So being a finance officer in the military, in the army, was a very narrow path of people that get
Yes.
chosen to do it. So I was like, at the top of my class and all this type of stuff. So I was like in my moment, it's like this is it. And subsequently I went, had to go to another base to get this biopsy done. And sure enough, it showed that like I was probably working on 50%
Wow.
of my kidneys had been scarred. It was this rare, um, I call it autoimmune disease called
Okay.
FSGS.
Okay.
And they were like, basically, your kidney is attacking itself and scarring
Wow.
itself. And I was just like trying to take all these things all in. And by nature, I'm a very, positive person. I always
Yes.
have a positive mindset. I've been through a lot of trials and tribulations, growing up throughout my life. And I always maintain like a very positive attitude. So even though it's very nerve wracking and a shock to my system, it did, you know, tug, at all of my heartstrings and all of those things
Yeah.
that, I had done before, and the future where I saw myself, I wanted to, get out of the military as like a colonel or
Right.
somewhere in that nature, at least 20 years, you know, you know,
Yeah. Do your
down
time
this
and
path.
continue the legacy that your family had started, right? And
Exactly.
certainly from my perspective, and I have to say, looking at your chart, right? Um, I call you the leader with the soul of a heart-centered creator wearing the mask of a warrior. It's very leadership driven, very, warrior-like. It's such a, an archetype of someone that I would see going into the Marines, someone that I would see
For sure.
going into finance, because your son is in Capricorn, and very aligned
Exactly.
with all of that. And how difficult to literally have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, now what? This is what I've been designing
Right.
my life for. And
Yeah.
so this led to having to have your first kidney transplant, essentially.
Yep, 2002, and that's another story within itself.
Right.
But my brother, my oldest brother, that was a Marine before, we were actually able to get into a NIH, the National Institutes of Health protocol,
Okay.
um, to try new drugs, test new drugs. They do these protocols, and it was actually, something I felt like I could give back. Right, I
Yes.
could help other people moving forward. If this is happening to me now, how can I do something, to help other people move forward that will have to eventually go through this? So yeah, 2002. It was kidney transplant, and 6 months prior to that, I had to go on dialysis, which,
Right.
at 20,
Oh,
24, 25, they're looking at me like, what are you doing here? Most
right.
people there were like in their 60s and 70s. And, but, I brought a lot of light
Yes.
to
Yes,
that
you
room,
did.
right?
Thank
I
you for
was
saying that.
talking to all these older veterans and all
Yes.
these different people, and they're like, wow, if you can do it, if give me inspiration. So I looked at that as part of my journey, and
Yeah.
something that I want to continue to do. So, and a side note is my brother actually had been waiting to go to medical school. So we were like on this protocol, we were waiting for the protocol we wanted wasn't happening. I had to go on
Right.
dialysis, and we were like, okay, it's crunch time. We have to do something. So we went on another protocol, got it done, and literally my brother was in recovery, and the next week he started at medical school,
Wow.
and a whole whirlwind of things happened from there. So yes, I had my first kidney transplant. Very challenging, apparently. Because like you said before, it totally just disrupted
Yeah.
everything that I thought. And from a physical perspective, right?
Yes.
I'm someone that's very physical, very athletic, and to be taken down and my body is now not in the tip top shape, that
Right.
I was used to was, very challenging. And then apparently that physical uh, ailment or challenge affects you, spiritually
It
and
sure
emotionally
does. And I
as well,
definitely
right?
want to jump into that and talk about that. But I for those that are listening, right? And I think maybe everybody knows someone who has needed dialysis or possibly had, kidney failure, kidney, disease and needed a transplant. I know my grandmother went through that and it was really difficult watching her go through it.
That's
To your point, when you're older, it's I can't say it's more challenging. I've never been through it. You have,
sure.
but I I see your perspective of being young, being this warrior person who is so positive, being able to share your light with those who are older, maybe at a different stage in their life and are very afraid. Um, because of who you are and how tough you are, Arabia, right? You do have so much energy and willpower and resilience. I see you as that kind of a person. I'm sure that's who you are when you were in the Marines and in the Army.
Sure.
Um, did you miss some signs? Because sometimes being so tough in life, we're not paying attention to what our body is informing us of. And I'm wondering, looking back, was there anything that your body was sharing with you that maybe you weren't like paying attention to? You're like, nah, 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 that's nothing, keep going, right?
Right. That's a great question, actually, as it relates to kidney disease.
Yeah.
So with kidney disease is you really don't start feeling symptoms
Okay.
until you have a kidney problem,
Gotcha.
right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but honestly, from being in the military, right, because we're doing all these different physicals, what was later found out was that in the Marine Corps, I actually started to have protein being spilled over, but
Okay.
it was kind of just like, yeah,
We'll keep
keep
monitoring
moving.
it. Right.
Yeah, well, not even monitoring it. They just kind of disregarded it and just like, yeah, go
Altogether.
back and do what you need to do. And then when I came uh, to officer basic camp, right? Not like the finance basic camp,
Right.
but the officer like boot camp over at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. There was actually showing kidney, um, well, the spillage of protein again. This
Right.
is probably 4 or 5 years later.
Wow.
And then finally, when I came back on active duty, when I was telling you I was in officer basic school for finance, is when they're like, hold on, something's going on here. So once they start looking back at
The
the
history.
medical
Hmm.
records and the history, then they're like, oh no, this has been going on since the Marine Corps.
Gotcha.
So from that perspective, it had been missed, right? But from me, from a physical perspective, you can live off one kidney, right? I'm
Right.
currently living
Yes.
off one kidney right now. So there wasn't a lot of missed symptoms
Okay.
that I would have experienced that
Hmm.
early on. It's probably not until you start getting to like maybe 10 or 15% function, maybe
Okay.
20% function, that you start feeling signs. You'll get swelling in the feet, you get mostly lower back pain.
Okay.
That's that's where you will start understanding that something is really going on.
Okay.
So luckily for me, blessed for me, I just happen to be in the military where they are constantly
Which is a gift.
doing
Yeah.
right some type of monitoring from a
Right.
PT perspective.
Yeah.
So
And I just
so
love to talk about, how we can be proactive, with our health. And I know that part of what you do is health
sure.
coaching, right? And helping others to really be healthy, mind, body, soul, and spirit. And we'll jump into that. But being able to, no matter what your age is, really pay attention to what your body is sharing with us, being quiet enough to
That's right.
kind of feel into what's happening with our bodies and doing the proper analysis to make sure that, we're catching things early on so that we can definitely, take care of ourselves and have that longevity. But let's go back to the spirituality of all of this, um, let's talk about like what this did for you after, looking at your career, looking at, my gosh, this was my purpose. This is what I wanted. And maybe now all of that has shifted. What was the trajectory of that? And um, how did you transform yourself to be able to then shift your career into a place where it was also purposeful and meaningful for you?
Sure. Great question. Wow. Um, it's hard for me because I
Yeah.
am, even though I am Capricorn,
A little stubborn.
yeah, I have a lot of structure and I'm very
Yes.
analytical, but at the same time, I'm very spiritual. I'm
Yeah.
very flowy.
Yeah.
I'm very heart centered.
Yeah.
My energy, soul chakra and sacral chakra. So I'm both, right? I'm
You are. And
left,
I want to mention for those who are
right,
astro lovers out there, because I have many astro lovers. Arabia is his moon and his rising is in Leo. You can't get
right,
any more heart-centered
right.
than that.
So I've always been like that too, right? So within the structure and all this that's going on, I'm very like I just one was raised that way and two is
Yeah.
just by nature. So my spirituality, I always kind of, felt different,
Yeah.
one of those type of things and never quite fit into the matrix of things and how things were supposed to be. So I always, although again, being a Capricorn with structure and very analytical, I was always able to be creative, color outside of the lines, and
Yeah.
follow my true self and
Yeah.
my true heart. I mean, it's always been very very difficult,
Yeah.
because
It is a
the
push and
the
pull, those
pressure
two.
it is, the pressures of society to be this and to be that, and then you think about it, right? Being in the military is very structured and you have to
Right.
follow this and that, regardless, of what you might believe or what you might think, right? So when some people that know me very well, it's like, how did you do that? It's like that doesn't, seem to be used. So I've always had this I just call it inner strength about me
Yes.
and an inner light that I
Mhm.
always felt. So from a spiritual perspective, it was always there, but I never really knew how to define it, so
Gotcha.
to speak. So very early on, I was probably 20.
Okay.
Someone handed me a book, and actually the person handed me the book was younger than me, probably about maybe 2 years, and it's called the Celestine Prophecy,
Oh, I love
and
that book. Yeah.
like the Bible almost
Yeah.
for spirituality, right?
Yeah.
And I read this book and it just totally kind of like put into perspective all the things that I was feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, slowly as you read the book, what I love about that book is you start to live and manifest these
Right.
things in the 9 insights that they talk about, right? So at this point, so this was probably four, well, let's see, 4 years before I'm just trying to think of the time frame here. Maybe 4 years, maybe 5 years before the whole transplant thing
Okay.
happened, right? So I had already started kind of being on the spiritual journey of what that looks like and what it is, and going outside of what you've been taught. And when the transplant happened, that just exponentially just magnified,
Right.
like, live in the moment,
Yes.
be grateful, gratitude. What you think is where you're supposed to go. It's not
Right.
necessarily where you are supposed to go. So that transformed me in such a way. Now I want to, be clear here. It wasn't where with some people were totally like, oh my God. For me, because I had already kind of been down the route, it just kind of clarified
It
things for
clarified
me
things for
to
you.
to another level, right? I'd always been, again, spiritually aware, but
Yeah.
now I was like much more connected. Like it was like a punch in the face. right?
Yeah.
It's like that saying that goes, it's like everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? And then you
The
wake
best
up and
plans are, I can't remember how it goes, but yeah, and I was having a conversation, interestingly enough, with my son yesterday. He's a Capricorn too. And he's, he struggles. We're constantly having a conversation around this struggle around doing things the way they should be, and Capricorns in particular having this need to check things off and make money and
that's
live the
right.
way society expects us to live, and it's so hard to let that go. But when you're able to be open and adopt a spirituality that allows you to not 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 to not be who that person is, because you're always that person, that voice is always there. But like I like to say, when we have a strength and we overdo it, it becomes a weakness, right?
Sure,
So we have to balance it out with the other aspects of who we are and what life is giving us, right? And in
sure,
your case, life was saying, hey, we're throwing a curveball here. How are you going to handle it? Are you going to try to
that's right.
fight it and keep being this person that you thought you needed to be? Or are you going to recognize that in some way this curveball is a gift asking you to be in the moment and,
Exactly.
and adjust, right? And
Yes,
it's one of the hardest things to do. I think that that's what living in flow really is for me,
is
is
1000%.
living in the moment and not putting these constraints on us that at the end of the day can cause so much stress and disharmony, but they can
Sure,
also remove all of this beautiful spiritual guidance that's leading us in a direction
correct.
that if we just open ourselves up, we can
1000%.
pay attention to it. And it sounds like your life was really being guided towards, hey, yeah, finance officer in the military, great. But really, we want you to be over here, you know,
Sure.
making change in the lives of others, helping to transform others, sharing your story of health with others. Um, how has how did that start taking shape for you?
Great question again. You coined it perfectly. It's, I think of I'm a huge Sade fan. That's for
Yes, me
people
too.
who
Love
know
her.
who Sade is. But one
Yes.
thing she says is the more we know, the less we see. Right.
Mm,
So very deep meaning. And she actually in one of her albums came out with a song called Flow.
yeah.
And I'm all about flow. I'm a martial artist,
Yes.
as well. So study, a lot of Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee
Mm,
always talks about water, right? He talked about
yes.
water earlier, how powerful it is. But one thing about water, right, is able to transform into many
Yeah.
different forms. And it
Yes.
can also be formless at the
Yes.
same time. So that's
Beautiful.
the beauty of it, right? So basically, what you were saying was like, yeah, I had this spirituality inside of me. I had this flow, but at the same time, I wasn't truly quite all the way connected to it and
Right.
aware of how to live it. And through, like, again, having a kidney transplant, it was like a punch in the face.
Yeah.
And it's like, listen, this is not the only thing you can do or only thing you can be. And, who else are you? So
Right.
it opened up that pathway, right, for me to be. I've always been mostly into fitness, right?
Yes.
Because again, I was athlete
Yep.
and, I had the talents. Um, but now from being on like a renal diet, starting to understand that now the nutrition part kind of started to come into play. So
Yes.
now I was much more cognizant about what I was eating based
Right.
on my kidney. And then that led me into understanding how it's all connected, right? It's
Yeah.
very important understanding how what you put in your mouth every day is energy, and that
Yep.
energy affects your body, and your body is built on emotions
Yeah.
and all these other hormones and things that are going to, end up controlling what you do, right? So over those years, I started being a little bit more fit from that perspective, right?
Right.
So, became a nutritionist, and then eventually, like further, like more functional nutrition. So now, how does it connect
Yes.
to, like you said, mind, body, soul, spirit? How all of that is really truly connected. So when I start studying those things, and I did a lot of traveling, you
Mm-hmm.
know, understanding how other people eat. I study, anything I could study. Yeah, I studied the five elements, through
Yes.
martial arts, qigong,
Yeah.
quantum healing, anything that
Yes.
related to, the seven
Right up my alley,
chakras,
Arabia.
all of this stuff I studied. I did get hardcore into astrology, like I
Yeah.
feel like I should have, but basic understanding. But yeah, so that transition, started to happen from a nutritional perspective, getting into spirituality, because when we start talking about how can you achieve transcendence, right? How
Yes.
can you take this human body and transcend to that spiritual level? And
Yeah.
again, it goes with putting things from the earth that are grown here for the earth, for your cells to
Yes.
have, to be able to open up your pineal gland to be
Yeah.
able to go there. So if you're not eating right and you're having toxins in your body, you're not optimizing your way to spirituality through that. So through nutrition, through fitness, through meditation, and all
Yeah.
these different modalities that I started to study and put together because of where I need to be, right? To be able to recover from, the kidney transplant. Those things started to transform
Yeah.
my life in that way, where I was now really able to connect to that spirituality that I always had, but
Yeah.
now make it effortless in my life through flow, right? So
Yeah.
now, like, because I'm open, because I'm not trying to jump to the future, I'm not trying to go back to the past. I can live now in the
Mm.
moment and enjoy the moment and flow and see those messages that the universe gives you every day for
Every
alignment.
day.
Yeah. But you can't be in alignment always if
No,
this human body that contains your soul, your spirit, is disconnected from itself due to the
absolutely.
things you're putting in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this conversation because, when I teach flow, I teach about energy, right? And
Sure.
energy, as you mentioned, there's so many inputs, right?
Sure.
That contribute to our experience of flow. And some of them are more difficult to attain than others, right? Energy and vitality through food, energy and vitality through our thoughts, right?
Yes.
Being able to slow down our thoughts, pay attention to what we're constantly saying to ourselves, about our lives, about ourselves. The energy and vitality we receive through knowing ourselves, right? And one of the ways we can really know ourselves and validate ourselves, and our life purpose and the gifts that we're here to use, and the way that we can use them are through sciences like the five elements, like astrology, right? So there's so many different inputs, to being able to achieve flow. And what I've learned is that sometimes all we need is to enter through one of them, and then we start paying attention to all of the others, right? So
Yes.
for one person, it's through health, which is what happened with you, although you started studying,
Sure.
spirituality, intaking that, and being in a state of awareness and understanding consciousness way before that. But um, so many different ways that we could achieve flow if we're just
Sure.
willing to pause and
Yes.
go slow and just, okay, where is the world, where is the universe guiding me, where's my body guiding me to where I need to pay attention right now? Is it my health? Am I not feeling well? Am I getting symptoms? Or is it my mind? I can't stop my mind. I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, right? Just paying
Right.
attention to what is it? I feel stuck. I feel like, even though I'm successful, I don't know what my purpose is. We have to
That's
ask
right.
ourselves these questions in order to be able to, you know, um, get to that flow. And I'm looking at the time and knowing we only have a few minutes left, but I want to ask you really quickly, because we were talking about qigong and energy and martial arts, and I happen to know that you have practiced capoeira for many years. I've seen videos of you teaching
Sure,
others how to do it. How did that
sure.
start for you? Um,
Yes. So yeah, so just being like growing up in the 80s, and watching Kung Fu theater back in the day, right? And again, a big Bruce Lee fan, and then my older brother, was into Wing Chun. So I kind of
yeah,
started out in Wing Chun, which was, you know, the art that BruceLee studied, and he created Jeet Kune Do out of
yeah,
that. So just watching these movies, doing these things, it's like and being again athletic, right? So we
yes.
always like,
Doing something
watching
with your body. Yeah.
exactly, watching ninja movies, so from Wing Chun to karate to uh jujitsu, just like trying all these different. I studied Muay Thai, for a while. I was traveling in Brazil and studying
Wow.
capoeira, and I was in a Muay Thai uh, dojo as well. So but with capoeira was so much different because
Yeah.
it was something that really touched me. I love to dance. When you
Yeah.
talk about flow, but
Yeah.
by nature, I'm a very good
You're
dancer. I
such a
love
good
to
salsa
dance,
dancer too. You
and I
totally
flow.
shocked me. On your
Well,
birthday, I have it in video. I may add it to
yes,
this,
you do.
of us
Oh, good.
dancing, and my partner in crime right now in my life was like, "Oh my God, he can
Yes,
dance
yes,
salsa."
yes. I am a dancer by nature, and through my many travels around the world, I lived in the Dominican Republic,
Wow.
and this is where I learned how to dance. So I have to give credit to the DR back in
Yeah.
the mid 90s. But yeah, so uh, because capoeira mixes the dance with the actual martial art
Yes.
and the story of capoeira and where it came from and the many facets that it has. So I was able to learn Portuguese.
Right.
We made our instruments.
Wow.
The better bow controls the flow of
Yes.
the movement. So all those things is why I have loved capoeira the most.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to actually take that and use it to teach kids. So I lived in Brazil for a while and then South Africa. So I was able to use capoeira as a conflict resolution tool
Right.
uh, for these
Wow.
kids that were in very impoverished areas, especially like South Africa, where they're very gang oriented with
Yeah.
the kids, and we were working in different townships. But to bring all of these kids together to speak that one universal language of capoeira was a beautiful thing to see. So again, through all the things I had done through spirituality, through nutrition, through
Yeah.
fitness, through all these things, I was able to, continuously give back and pay it forward, right? For
Absolutely.
all of these things that I've been
Yeah.
blessed to again
Heart-centered.
live in that moment. Yeah, heart centered, being able to do that. And that's what's been very transformative for me. And that's what I just love to do. Man. I just love to coach. I love to get back. I love to listen. I love to learn. I love to, be in the flow of
Yeah.
things. And
Well,
it's an
it is
awesome,
all over
awesome
your
feeling.
chart, all over your chart. In fact, your son is in the sixth house of work and health and wellness. So that's
Right.
exactly where you shine. And your moon and your rising sign are in the first house of the body. So, of course, you need to use
Sure.
your body. You need to teach through the body. And there's so much more I can share about your beautiful chart. But in closing, I would love for you to share with everyone who's listening how they can get in touch with you. What's the work that you're doing now? I'm sure you incorporate all of this into, into your coaching and
Sure.
transformational
Yes.
work.
Yeah, so my transformational work is spread across different facets, right? So as you mentioned, like I'm working with a group of women, a lot of
Mhm.
Women Nation.
Yeah.
So I'm helping with them from shadow work perspective,
Yeah.
personal development, being
Mhm.
able, I was able to offer like capoeira as
Yes.
one of the trainings, one of the things
Beautiful.
that we do. I'm always about nutrition and health and wellness, and more importantly, really what is that connection? I've been recently studying epigenetics. So you
Yes,
probably know like Joe Dispenza and all that stuff, and really how
absolutely.
it all really connects. I think is very important because once you can bridge that for people, then it clicks and it's
Right.
easier for them to do that. So yeah, so I'm working with different people, working with different individual groups,
Mm,
and different hopefully more corporations and groups
beautiful.
to be able to spread that knowledge. So yeah, you just reach me at info at arabiadarensberg.com. That's
Okay.
DARENSBURG. And yeah, I'll respond to you and
Beautiful. And I'll also
hopefully
share the Loud Women Nation link for any of the women out
sure.
there who are interested in
Oh, big time, sure.
this
It's
transformational work.
amazing, amazing
And
work. Yes.
I'm just going to close it out with this quote, that you shared with me, which is one of the things that you know to be true, which is life is not about the number of breaths that you take, but the moments that take your breath away. And
Love that quote. Love
what
it.
a beautiful way to end this. And thank you for sharing that. Arabia, thank you for sharing your story and for spending this time with me. And I can't wait to put it out there and share it with the world.
Thank thank you so much, Monique, for all the great work that you are doing, for your love and support that you've given me through my troubling times with health. And I really respect you, honor you, love you, and I am thankful to be a part of your beautiful podcast. Fierce
Thank
moment.
you. Thank you. Likewise. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see you all soon.